With the help of Hashem, we are learning Sanhedrin Daf Samach Vov. We left off on Daf Samach Vov, Amud Aleph, 4 lines from the top of the Amud by the Mishnah, Hamachalal Shabbos. And as we are going through really the Mishnah that we had on Daf Nun Gimel, Elohein Haneskolin, and that's exactly where we are up to. Chilul Shabbos, b'mezid, obviously with the proper hasra and with the edim v'chulei. Person is chayv skila. We're going to see a certain qualification in the Mishnah. We're going to go on to the next Mishnah on today's daf regarding the grave violation, God forbid, of cursing one's father or one's mother. What we will have a discussion in the Gemara, which will be a great classic example of a binyan av tzad hashava. In other words, first of all, that the Torah says explicitly, hamakalal, etc., mois yumas, for that we don't need to have a tzad hashava. But there is a rule that every violation for which the Torah specifies a punishment, there has to be another pasuk, which is the warning. There has to be one verse that says, thou shalt not. And then that same violation will be mentioned again, and there, either explicitly or implicitly, the Torah is going to tell you the oinish. It's called the ein oinshin ela imkein mazirim. So we're looking for the hazara of cursing a father and the mother, and you're not going to find it. Well, there's only one verse that says that if someone does it, they're chayiv skila. Where is the hazara? So we're actually not going to find a direct warning, but we're going to learn it out, as we'll see from the pasuk that we just used a few dafim ago. Elohim loy sekalol. That's the pasuk that we have in Mishpatim, and we're pronouncing it not with the kin, because at least there's a machlokes tanoim, but we're going to begin to follow the shita that says that Elohim refers to a judge. I know a judge is not a father, but we're going to have between a father, v'nasi ba'am cholei so'er, we're going to at least attempt to put together the whole idea of a common denomination. When the Torah says something in A, the Torah says something in B. A and B are not similar. We find what is in common, and that becomes the source for C. We're going to have on Daf Samach Vav Amid Beis the next topic, which is going to be a person who, God forbid, has an act of cohabitation with a na'ara hami'urasa, as we have in Parshas Kiseitze. Actually, the Mishnah Torah Shabbat Peh is going to give 4 qualifications. Not only must she be a na'ara, which is a certain age, 12 and 2 bodily years, bodily maturing. For the next 6 months, she's called a nara, after which she becomes a boigeres. The Torah says nara hami'oirasa. But on top of that, we're going to see 2 other qualifications. And if a woman doesn't meet all of the 4 qualifications, then of course, if she is already mikudeshes or married to a man, then the general punishment for an act of adultery is chenek, is strangulation. But the skila, which is the sugya that we're learning through, is dafka for the nara hameurasa plus. We'll see what that is. We're going to learn a little bit about Maaseh Chidudin, what that means, and there is no punishment of skila for that. We will learn also about the unique punishment that Hashem gives to ubas ish koyen kiseichel liznois, that she gets sreifa. In other words, these are all halachically married. Married doesn't mean after nasuyin. Married can also mean only after kiddushin. But a married woman, normally the penalty for adultery is chenek, strangulation. The exceptions will be nara hameorasa skila, ubas ish koyen sreifa. We'll see if the bas ish koyen sreifa is only if she is meoreses, if it's for machlokes tanoim, and many more details. Without any further ado, Chavra, let's start. Samach Vav Amud Aleph, again 4 lines from the top of the Amud by the Mishnah. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu malachenu b'shar kol yom v'dvar. Says the Mishnah, hamachalal es haShabbos. The person is Mechalal Shabbos, but here we add a detail only b'davar shechayov and also doini koros. Ba'al shigagosei chatos, if it is an act for which b'mezid koros, b'shoigeg chatos, which is the rule. For that, if a person had hasra and edim, they're going to be chayiv skila. Now, what the Mishnah is really implying is not every act of biblical chilul Shabbos brings about koros and chatas, and for those biblical violations, their taka won't be skila. But what are they? Says the Gemara Mechlal. The Mishnah is trying to imply, not the Mishnah is implying the ikemida, which is taka chilul Shabbos and biblical chilul Shabbos. Nevertheless, and mahi, what is it? And then Gemara gives 2 violations of Shabbos. One is tchumen, walking beyond the tchum, and this only follows the opinion of Rabbi Akiva. Now, what's beautiful is the following, that when we learned Shabbos, in Masechta Shabbos, Shitas Rabbi Akiva, there was a machlokes rishonim concerning that machlokes. Many opine, like the Rambam, that the Chachamim who hold tchumen is midrabanan, that's only the 2,000 Amma tchum. But the 3 parsa tchum, walking beyond that, even the Chachamim hold, that's also asur midoraisa. The other rishonim that argue with the Rambam, and they hold that the Chachamim who argue with Rabbi Akiva hold that they hold all of tchumen is only midrabanan, and have a gevaldik raya from our Gemara. The fact that our Gemara needed to say that we're speaking about someone who walked beyond Tchum Shabbos, but this only follows Rabbi Akiva, if even Lechachamim, beyond the bigger Tchum of 3 parsa, you're violating a Doiraisa, and L'Kula Alma, whether Rabbi Akiva, like the Rambam, according to the Chachamim, beyond 3 parsa, you're not Chayiv Kares, nor you're not Chayiv Kares, you're not Chayiv Chatos for a Shogi. That could have been the case of the Mishnah, making the Mishnah only function Ladas Yachid, even though it's a great yachid and it's common for Stam Mishnah to be Rabbi Akiva. That is a great raya for the others, and it's a big kash on the Rambam. At least we spoke out the challenge. And number 2, kindling a fire, creating a fire. Va'aliba de Rabbi Yosi, as we just had a few daf ago, that the Torah Taka says loisasa melachem, but in the beginning of Vayakal, the Torah specifies loisavaru eish v'chol meshveisechem. Why did the Torah have to specify havara? So we have Rab Nosson that says lachalik. Lachalik means, according to Rab Nosson, if a person creates a fire, and so we paskin, it is as severe as any other act of Chilul Shabbos, Yechayiv Skila, Yechayiv Kodesh, Yechayiv Chatas, God forbid. The reason why the Torah specified is that's the source that if a person behelam achas, Zodoim Shabbos, Shigigas Malachas, they're going to be chayiv many chatois. The Tana, Rab Nosson doesn't learn it from achas mehena. He learns it from here, but Rabbi Yosi disagrees. Rabbi Yosi learns that the Torah Taka separated Havara to tell you that even though it's taka lav, God forbid, we're not minimizing it. Lav would mean that if you violate it, b'mezid yechayv malchus. But there's no kares, there's no skila, and it is that the Mishnah is referring to. That when do we say yechayv skila? Not for Havara, according to Rabbi Yosi. Next case that was mentioned in the Mishnah Daf Nun Gimel is.
I mean, the Gemara is saying that this Mishnah is only going according to those 2 Tanaim.
Yeah, clear. Yeah, next Mishnah, Hamakala Lova V'imoi. Here again, the Torah writes skila. The Torah doesn't really explicitly write skila, but as we'll see, it says in Kedoshim, right? Ish ashi yakalal es aviv ve'esimei mois yumas. The Torah doesn't say what death that is. The Torah noch adds aviv v'imoi kilel, which mamish appears to be superfluous. Then it says dam of boy, and as we'll see, the dam of boy will be used to learn that it's skila. Now, it says the Mishnah, a person has to evoke God's holy name. Now, I know that we also just spoke about Megadef and here, the Rishonim learn whether the person used Yudke Vavke, may Yudke Vavke, God forbid, curse someone says about his father or mother, or Shem Adnai, then he'll be chayiv. However, kilulam bikinoi, if he said God should curse, but the word that he used was a subordinate name, very interestingly, here kinoi means shakai suvakos, which are shemos that are einam lemchakim, or chanun v'rachum. Puts them together. Normally, kinoi refers to chanun v'rachum. No, halachically there are 7 names that may not be erased, like shakai. Like we don't even pronounce it properly. It's a shem kodesh. We say rachum, we say chanun. Rashi writes, all of them are included in kinoi. What happens then? Machlokes tanoim. Rav Meir says mechayev, and the chachamim poitrin. Macheva important. Poitrin means from skila, like we had on the previous Mishnah. Even the chachamim, if a person says meishakai, God forbid, curse that person's father or mother, the chayiv malchus, b'mezid. But again, we're focusing whether you chayiv skila. Man chachamim asks the Gemara that I point to Bekinoi, zok the Gemara that Rabbi Menachem but Rabbi Yosi whom the Tanya Rabbi Menachem and Rabbi Yosi Yomer. Now we're going chevra to a different inyan, mamish me'inyan le'inyan. We're quoting that which is recorded at the end of Parshas Emor. Remember that person that was noikev shame vayikoy ves Hashem. and we're going to follow those who understand Vayikra Ves Hashem and Emor, was blasphemy. And the Torah writes, you must. And if you read the Psukim, you'll notice that the word shame is extra. The Torah could have written bin nakvoi, you must. Why does the Torah write the word shame? Limeid al mekalal ava v'imoi she'ena chayiv ad she'yikalal leim b'shem. And this is perhaps one of the most difficult limudim. We know that there aren't only Yud Gimel Midos. There are many more than the Yud Gimel Midos. This one is called Im Einoi Inyan, Teneo Le'inyan. Now, how do you know? I get Im Einoi Le'inyan because something is written that's not needed. But where do you apply it and how do you apply it? Wow, you have to have Ruach HaKodesh. There are some times that in Hasidus, there's a Gavaldiki insight about exactly what is the inner link. But at least we are familiar with the words. Okay, Cherotan Rabbanan, we just quoted the Pasuk in Kedoshim. And it begins, Ish, Asher Yekalel es Aviv ve'es Imoy, right? God forbid, Mois Yumas. And in the same pasuk it says, Aviv ve'imoy kilel, dam of boy. So beginning with Ish. Ish is extra every time. Ish, what's Ish? Ish, Teitchain Eimal Ish, Matam Oblemer the Tzveitim Ish. Oh, Ish answers the Baraisa the rabbis, right? The Torah is speaking generally to a man, Ish. What happens if not the son cursed father or mother, the daughter cursed? Bas goes on the one who's doing the cursing. Or if the child is a tumtum, or if the child is an androgynous. That's why ish to include all of them. Weiter. It says, Ashi yakalal es aviv ve'es imoy. We have this every now and then. This big machlokes tanoim, when the Torah uses the letter oi, the word oi means or. This or that. The letter vav can be understood two ways. That's the big issue. Does it mean someone is only chayiv skila if he cursed both? It doesn't say oi. It says ish asher yekalal aviv ve'es, not oi ve. And or only if it's and. So that's going to be the question. And where do we learn it from for the answer? So it says the Braisa shekalal es aviv ve'esimoy ainli elo aviv ve'imoy mashma. This is according to Rabbi Yoshia that vav means both. Aviv shaloi imoy or imoy shaloi aviv minayin. That's why, says Rabbi Yoshia, the Torah repeats in the same verse. Aviv ve'imoy kiloil dam of boy. Why do you need that repetition? And it's not only why you need the repetition, but if you look in the pasuk, you'll notice that in the reish of the pasuk, the word aviv is written closest to the words yikalal, because ish asher yikalal es aviv es imoy, first father then mother. So aviv is juxtaposed with kilal. In the seif of the pasuk, right where it says aviv v'imoy kilal, you get it? So there, the imoy is the closest to kilal. That's the word. Aviv kilal, imoy kilal, divrei Rabbi Yoshia. Without that, Rabbi Yoshia would not know that it means either or, because according to Rabbi Yoshia, a vav means and, both. Rabbi Yonasan, they both agree to the same halacha, that this grave violation of cursing doesn't have to be only for both to be chayiv skila, but he doesn't need that, because vav, even when the Torah says vav, it can mean both. It can also mean and or. Rabbi Yonasan, mashma shneim ki echad. Sometimes a vav can mean shneim ki echad, but also, a vav is mashma echad b'fnei atzmai. And if Hashem wants to tell you something and he wants you to only be able to interpret it both, Hashem adds the word yachtov. L'sachroish b'shteit a b'shoyer v'chamoyer yachtov. B'shoyer v'chamoyer vav. If a vav would mean and, the word yachtov is extra. Now there for sure, the whole issue is putting two different types together. The fact that the Torah needed to write yachtov is the teacher that all other places where the letter vav is used without yachtov, either or, achi yipar l'cha yachtov. Weiter, mois yumas, the Torah doesn't say how, so Chazal tell us it means beskila. Frek de braisa ato emer beskila oy einoi elo ba'achas mikol misas v'amuras b'Torah. Right, you have sreifa, you have hereg, you have chenek. How do you know it's skila? So it says the Braisa, since the Torah says the ends, this pasuk ends with the words "dam of boy." It's like your blood is on your own head; it's your fault. Your blood is on you. The nemer lahalon. We just had this chevra in yesterday's daf by Oiv and Yudoini. There, the Torah writes explicitly skila, and the Torah also uses the words demei and bam. The Meyambam, Malahalan, Befedish, the Torah writes Skila, Afkan knows whenever God writes the words Damav Boy or the Meyambam, Yachad or Rabim, it means Biskil. That's clear. Pasuk and Kedoshim. Problem is, Ein Oinchin, Ela Imkain, Mazidin. Where else do you have in the whole Chamishim Shetoida a pasuk that just says Stam, thou shalt not curse your father? You're not going to find it, which is a problem. Right? The last narrow line. Oine Shemanu Azora Minai. Answers the Braisa. That Talmud Loimer in Parshas Mishpatim. Now there are two ways of reading the pasuk. Machlokes Tanoi. If this word is referring to God, then we pronounce it Elokim. But we're going to begin with the Tana that understands that this is in reference to a judge, and we dafka therefore don't say Elokim. If it's not to Hashem, say Elohim. Here, Elohim loisekalo. That's a judge. Then it says weiter, just to know, v'nasi ba'amcha loisa. Or a nasi means the king. A nasi sometimes can mean the Av Bezdin, a leader. A judge, I know that the Av Bezdin is also a judge, but it's more than that, a leader. Okay, so that's a warning. Now, there's no punishment written there, right? So says the Braisa, im haya aviv dayan, harei b'chlal Elohim leisichalo. Im haya aviv nasi, harei b'chlal b'nasi b'amcha leisor. No, it's if the father is taka one of the two. Now that's the warning. But it's not because he's tata, it's because he's a judge, because he's a nasi. Einoi loy dayin v'loy nasi minayin. So Chavra, again, this is a binyanav, and it's good to chazak this type of limud. It's the fact that the Torah writes both down, and the words that the Chazal uses, loy ri'izeh, kiri'izeh, the nature of one or the characteristic of one is not like the characteristic of the other. So if the Torah writes something concerning Aleph, the Torah writes something same concerning Beis, and they do not share the same characteristic, so we find the common characteristic, the Tzad HaShava, and anything else that has that same common characteristic will be learned from the Binyanav, from a Tzad HaShava. So, why? Because the nature, the unique nature, or the unique characteristic of a nasi, of a leader, is not kiri idayim. And the Braisa will explain how each one is different. If they would have shared the same characteristic, then we would have said that the Torah repeated the same din by two different cases. They share the same characteristic, is to tell you that you may not apply to any other case, just for those two. But since they don't share the same characteristic, that's a bona fide binyanav. And the Braisa explains, how are they different? A person, right, is commanded not to disregard a halachic ruling of a Elohim, to the point that you have a concept of a Zaken Mamre. In other words, this concept that he gave a psak, you have to follow it, is something unique when it comes to a judge. To a leader doesn't give a psak, even though we had many Nesiim that were big Talmidei Chachamim. That's something else. That's not to be avoided the Malchus, but that's not about Hoyra'am. That's how they're different. And Kirei Nasi, She'iyat HaMetzuva Al Hara'asai. Means if the Nasi happens to have an opinion, a halachic opinion, he's like you, he's like me. And Baruch Hashem, you got a Nasi who's also a Yid that's learning. But the concept that I'm bound by the ruling, it's something unique to a judge. Similarly, how is he special? You cannot be moided the malchus. In other words, if he gives let's call this in English, a executive order, not upside down. A judge cannot give an executive order. Judge has to tell you what the Torah says. A Nasi is the one that says that independent of halacha, you got to follow this order. Okay, and what is the common characteristic? That they're Yidden. That's a very, very broad, general characteristic that the Gemara is going to disregard, because it's not true, because you can argue that they both share positions of leadership. And how would you know that if there is a father that doesn't have any such position? But here, a Yid, Gavaldik. And the Torah says, because that pasuk is saying Elohim loisekalo. I know that the word is kalel, by the Nasi it's loisoir. It means both cursing. That we're just looking for a hazara. The punishment we already have. So afani avicha shabam chayid. And va'atamuzar al kelolosoi. All right, sounds great. Problem is, or maybe this is still part of the Braisa. Shekain Gidula son Garmalahem. No, it's they have a certain exalted position. Either you're a judge or you're a nasi. Again, how would you learn this concerning a father? Now, if a father would have another exalted position, we would not be able to learn it. He would be the Gabai. But a father who has no such position, you can't learn it from here. So therefore, Talmud Loimer, when it says, don't curse even a deaf person. In other words, a deaf person, a umlal means a humble person. That's what it means. So it's not that since the person has a psak gedula, you can't curse. Even a chedesh cannot be cursed. The Gemara says, I got another problem with that. You can't include everyone. You can include either someone who has a position of leadership, or, I don't want to say nebuch in a bad way, or a person who has a handicap. But what about the average? It may be dafka humble. Maybe dafka humble you can't say. So nasi v'dayin yerchichu. We're still trying to keep on going with our tzad hashava. That what? That mal nasi v'dayin, but you can't do that. Nasi and dayin are unique. Shekain gedulasim garmalahem. So in other words, you see that the Torah doesn't want you to curse anyone that has a position of leadership. The Torah doesn't want you to curse anyone who dafka has a humble position. That what makes them similar? What's their common characteristic? This very broad. They're Yidin, ba'amcha. And we're emphasizing this. If a person, God forbid, has a non-Jewish father, then there would be no hazara. We're not saying he should curse, but that's not included. So you're good. You find people with gedula, you find the umlo. No. Mishunin means they're different from ordinary people. It's a good kashi. In other words, you can say that anyone who's either big or the opposite, but not the average. No, I would word it differently. I would argue that for every child, the father has a place of gedula. That was my question on this. Okay. Anyway, the Gemara therefore rejects the tzad hasham. And we're going to go now to another today, which is the best limud. Oh, so where is there something extra? Ella means nisht. Ella means we reject. It's not a binyan av. Im kain nichtoiv krah oy Elohim. Again, I'm pronouncing it kedas hatanoim, that it means a judge. V'chereish, or the Torah should only mention the pasuk, right? Nasi ba'amcha leisod, and the chereish, and you're going to have the warning that if anyone is mishuna on a higher pedestal, under the pedestal, then you will know. Elohim lamali. And now, so in other words, one of these three are extra. Just to be consistent, we're going to use the word nasi as extra. Could have written it. It could have been the other way. The Gemara says both. I just want to follow one, not to say too many words. No, it's extra. The Torah could have written Elohim and Chedesh. Nasi is extra. Taka extra. So we say in Einoi Ingen Legufay Tenei Ingen La'avu. Okay, that's it. Now, problem is it extra? I'll tell you why the problem is. The Amar that Elohim refers to a judge. That's the meaning of the word Elohim Choil. This Elohim is Choil. Then you're right. Then if the Torah only would have written here Elohim Leisekalo, and the Torah would have written elsewhere Chedesh, right? Chedesh ba'amcha b'Yisrael Leisekalo Chedesh, I would have known on my own from a tzad hashava that nasi ba'amcha loisod. The nasi is extra. But according to the man the Omer, that in this pasuk in Mishpatim, it's Elohim loisikal, it's kodesh. Ma ikalomeimer. No, you can't compare. The Torah has to write Elohim. That's a separate thing. And then you have chedesh. Nothing is extra. Thank you. The nasi is not extra. The Tanya. Let's go. Elohim choil divrei Rabbi Shmuel. Means in this pasuk in Mishpatim, Elohim is referring to judges, and it's like it's Elohim means a power, but it's referring to human beings. Rabbi Akiva says in our pasuk, Elohim is in reference to God, and therefore it's a Shem Kodesh. L'may nafkamina, for exactly what we're doing right now. When you read the pasuk, if you don't read the entire verse, you can't say Shem Hashem. So, but like now, we're learning Elokim loisikal was Rabbi Akiva. Rabbi Shmuel says no, Elohim loisikal. And not only Rabbi Akiva. Let's go Vitanya, another brayso. Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov Hazor Elovavarachas Hashem Inayin. This sugi that we had just a few daf ago. Again, you have to have a pasuk that tells you the punishment, which we have in Megadev. If Megadef means cursing at the end of Emor. But where does the Torah say thou shall not? Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov says, Talmud Lemed Elokim lo yisikalo. Gewaldik. Answers the Gemara. Again, I can go both ways. I'm just going to go the whole time that Nasi is extra. No, that the Torah, even if Elokim is Kodesh, we on our own would have learned the Hazara not to curse a judge from the fact that God says, don't curse God. Now the question is how? Let's read it inside. Answers the Gemara. Leman do Amar Elohim Choil. Where do you know that God told us not to curse God? Even according to Rabbi Yishmael that says Elohim Choil, Gamar Kodesh Michoil. That's enough. Now, by the way, that makes a lot of sense. It's called, if even a judge who may not curse, you can't curse God. And that's enough of ein oinshin, elam kein mazirin. That's implied in that. But now the Gemara adds the chiddush that even Lamanda Amar Elokim Kodesh, which is really the question that we have. Because if Elokim is Kodesh, then Nasi is not extra. It is extra. Why is it extra? Because Gomenin on Chol mi Kodesh, we would learn Chol means judge. And now that we would learn judge from God, how we'll see in a moment, so Nasi is extra. Because if you have at least implicit, not Elohim, a judge, you can't curse the Elohim, can't curse the Chedesh. We would have known on our own Nasi. So why does the Torah say it's Nasi on the sword? I mean, Inyan Teneyu, father. But the problem is, what's the logic? The logic works that if you can't even curse a judge, Avada, you can't curse the Eibishter. That makes sense. And you're telling me that Gomar, Kodesh, Michoil, and that's the Minayin La'azara to Birchas Hashem. It fits. Elo, according to the Mando Amrim. Now we have really two, because we have here Rabbi Akiva and Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov. Correct. That what? That Eloikim is Kodesh, so Gomar, Choil, Mikodesh doesn't make sense. Because Dilma, maybe you can't go the other direction. A Kodesh Azhar, because Kodesh, the Eibishter. And maybe Yachoil, Taka judge, but it's not a human being. Loyaza. So the Gemara answers, let me tell you what is extra here. That since the Torah could have written, instead of writing Elokim, Loisikalo, the Torah could have written Elokim, Loisakel, which means the Zelvazach. The Shlem is laughing that I pronounce it correctly. I don't know. Oh, Baruch Hashem. Oh, so the Lamed, yeah. Daf Samach Vav Amid Beis. My loisikal.
Just like taking out the line.
Perfect. Yeah. Shman again. So we'll get the steps. So Shman loisikal means karta means even though according to Rabbi Akiva, when you quote this pasuk only in part, you got to say Elokim loisikal. But included in that is not to curse a judge, and therefore Torah says don't curse a judge. The Torah says don't curse a death. The Torah did not need to say don't curse the Nasi. And that is the Azara of cursing the father. And Saila Rabbi Yoshe, Saila Rabbi Yonason, whichever way you want to learn it, it's either or. And the Torah writes, Dom of boy, so that closes that if a person, God forbid, curses a parent, but he has to evoke God's name, then he's chayiv skill. Okay, next.
Maybe it's a silly question because I don't have the power to be making these kind of drushes, but I can say if you can't curse Hashem, who's Avinu, then yeah, you can't curse your father.
Okay, so there we go.
Use the extra lamed.
Yeah, okay. So Shuki is just saying that it fits now that we know you can't curse either. The Eibishter is also our father. So it fits. And it's the same, and it's the same punishment.
The eight on the Indian that you go to.
No, because we're learning it, and because one way the Gemara allows both ways. We're learning it. We're comparing God to we're learning father from Nasi, and not father from God.
But then we also had the limitations based on the you can't go against the king, the Hamaharaso, the Nasi, and
Beautiful. Okay, Mishnah. Next, Daf Nun Gimel, the Seder, this is all skila. Now, guys, remember, an act of adultery. When we say adultery, we're specifically speaking about a man having a relation with a married woman, and not to get confused. Marriage begins with kedushin, even though many times people say kedushin is engagement. That's why it's so good to use the fancy English word that no one knows, betrothal, betrothed, amachaya. So betrothed, it's married. Normally, misason bechenek, the Torah is machadesh, clearly, in Parshas Kisei say that if a man had a relation with a nara hame'oirasa, nara means a woman goes through 3 stages in life. She's a ketana, which is from when she's born until when she's 12. If she begins to mature, that means that 2 pubic hairs begin to grow. Then for 6 months, she's called a nara. That is where we find in the Torah the adolescent phase. By a man, there's no adolescence, al pi Torah. Either you're a minor or you're an adult. By women, there's adolescence, there's like in between. And then you become a boigeres. Now, the Torah says that if it's a machazishing to say something, but you're mute, you have to shut your mute off.
You need to know the word betrothed if you're going to give a share in Basi Lagani. It's the first line.
There you go for Basa Ligari, but Azavort. Okay, so now Zak the Mishnah. So again, when you read the Chumash, you know that there are 2 qualifications: Nara, Me'oirasa. That means that if she's a boigeres, Moirasa, or a Nara that's already married, even though she's still we'll see about Psula. These 2, Chenek. The Mishnah says there are 4 qualifications. Haba Nara HaMe'oirasa Eino Chayv Ad. Number 1, Shetahei Nara. That's clear. That age, from 12, from the moment she has 2 sa'aros, for the next 6 months, she's called a nara. She can become a nara when she's 14. Oh, she turned 12. She only developed 2 pubic hairs. Whenever that day begins, for the next 6 months, she's a nara. Number 2, psula. Okay, she has to be a virgin. Number 3, only during the time that she's betrothed, me'oirasa. And now number 4, v'hi bebeis aviyah, which means that when there were times, we're using the words of Chazal, that the shluchei habal, the shluchim of the husband-to-be, go and sends people to bring her to him. She didn't enter the chuppah. She's not even in his neighborhood yet. But once she's no longer bebeis aviyah, then if someone has a relation with her, misasan bechenek, this is adultery, but this unique skila does not exist. Another chiddush says the Mishnah, we got to get moving, that bo allow shnayim, if God forbid 2 men committed adultery with her, harishan beskila, bahasheni bechenek. And the obvious question is, pshita. The Mishnah gave qualification number 2, psula. Okay, versteht sich. So Rashi has a gewaltige chiddush. Rashi says that the Mishnah is speaking about 2 men who cohabited with her, shaloi kedarka. Just again, for clarity, to say it once, and that will be enough. Shaloi kedarka means anal intercourse. So the first, there's a chiddush on each one. You can argue that bia shaloi kedarka is not called bia. So it's a terrible thing, but you're not going to be chayv misas based it. So we learned from the pasuk that the Torah writes in Parshas Achri Mois regarding mishkav zechur. It says mishkavei isha, with a male don't have what you would have mishkavei lashon rabim. That Chazal learned that whether it is kedarka or shaloi kedarka, it's called an act of cohabitation. So the Rishon who had a bia with her shaloi kedarka is chayv skila. Another chiddush, you would think that since the first one had a bia shaloi kedarka, she's still a psula. Begashmias, she's still a psula. If she's a psula, it should be skila. No, that's the next chiddush. That since she had a relation with a man prior, halachically she's not called a psula, and that's why that each one gavalik, each one.
And then if the second at the
Avada, the second one, it doesn't make a difference. It doesn't make a difference. Doesn't make a difference. The point is that she's already considered for this no longer the psula. Okay, Zokti Gemaraton Rabbanon. Guys, we're going to the pasuk in Parshas Kisei. The Torah writes clearly. The Torah writes that Nara tells you v'loy boigeres. Now, what the antenna should go up is that is this a upper limit or also a under limit? In other words, are we excluding a boigeres? What about a ketana? That will be a big part over here. Now, don't forget, a ketana b'chlal is not a bas chiyuv. So what will b'chal? It's a big topic. Like what happens if 2 people commit a sin? One of them is not shaykh to einchin. Would it exempt the other one from earthly punishment or not. That will be a big topic now. But let's go. Not of Eloi Boigeres. Torah writes the word psula. We know Eloi Ba'ula. Mo'irasa, Eloi Nasuya. The base of Iya, like we spoke out, Prat, that even though she's still a nara and she's a psula, she's not even together with, not even chuppah. It's not the sugya we're going to have in ksubas and having yavamas sometimes if a girl already went to the chuppah before they had a relation. No, not even a chuppah yet. But the moment she's under the care, not even only of the Baal directly, of the shluchim of the Baal, she's no longer included in this parsha. And if God forbid adultery happened, there's chenek, but not skilom. Omar Rav Yehuda, Omar Rav, what we quoted the Braisa with these details, right? The prat, right? Nara and not boigeres. That only is Rabbi Meir. Avol chachomim oimrim nara hameurasa afilu ktana b'mashma. Oh, it's moida not boigeres, but only nara. That's only Rabbi Meir. Okay. Amalei Rav Acha medifta l'Ravina mimai demasnisin de Rav Meiri ulam uteketane nami. Don't forget the Mishnah writes haba nara meurasa nara. Maybe the Mishnah only meant nara and not boigeres. Maybe the author of the Mishnah is also the Chachamim and Taka. If she was a ketana, as long as she wasn't the boigeres and she met the other three qualifications, she's psula, she's meurasa, she's bebeisavia, she'll also be chayv skila. Both the ketana nami. Demaraban nilamu to boigeres v'suloi. Amalei, you have to know how to read Mishnah. The Mishnah says the words ad shetehei nara. Ad shetehei nara. You did not have to write. You could have written Haban Aras and Chayiv Ella Benara. Ad shetehei is like a very clear exclusion. Dafke nara. Hi Eino Chayiv ad shetehei nara psula meorasa. The Mishnah could have written Eino Chayiv Ella al nara psula meorasa mi bayalei. Ad shetehei the Gavaldik. You see, it's clear. Ad shetehei means no dafke, meaning not only not when she's a begeres, not when she is a ktano. And this is such a good answer that nothing else is needed, taka, to say that our Mishnah follows Rabbi Meir. Okay. Now asks the Gemara, Bo'o minei Rabbi Yaakov bar Ada from Rav, according to Rav Meir, that we exclude the ktano from this parsha. How far are we excluding it from the Dinei Misas Bezdin? Bo ala ktana. By the way, it doesn't only mean moirasa. She's a psula. She's bebeisavia, according to Rav Meir. Is it legamri memayitle? In other words, no one is saying that he didn't sin. God forbid. We're saying is that the adulterer, the adult, she's avad exempt. The adulterer won't get any misas based. Normally, for adultery, you get chenek. Here, this parsha is giving you the exception from the nara meirasa skila. So is Rav Meir excluding the case of someone cohabiting with a ketana? Legamri, from human punishment. No, it's the man who won't even get chenek. Oidilma, only miskilim amayatle. Taka. But chenek, yeah. She's not a basanchin, but he is. So Amalei, so Rav responds, mistabra, that only miskilim amayatle, but the man is going to be put to death by chenek. So answered Rav. Frag the Gemara, why? Now the Gemara's question is not coming from words that are written in the parsha of Naraham Oirasa, but mamish. If you remember, say there's one case, another case, another case. In the case prior, the case that's juxtaposed above, the Torah is speaking about two people committing adultery. The Torah writes that ki matzah ish shoichevim isha bu'ulas baal. That's the pasuk says. So it says, Umeisu gam shneim. And Meisu gam shneim. So what do you mean Umeisu gam shneim? Umeisu. Umois yumsu. What's the guy? What do we Meisu gam shneim? Two people committed adultery. It's chenek. So it says the Gemara, we learned from over there where he's quoting a Braisa. Gam shneim means ad sheyu shneim shavim. Shneim shavim means one thing, my friends. It means they are both of age, just to make it clear. The similarities is only in that. So the Braisa L'choyda is saying that if they're not Shneim Shavim, then they are completely excluded from Misas Chenek. This pasuk that we're quoting is not about the Nara Morasa. It's about Bechlal. In other words, when two people do a sin together, if one is not of age, then Beis Din will not punish the other. So Rav was quiet. Bechlal, Shasek Rav doesn't mean that he was refuted. It means he didn't have an answer in Bina. Right? There's Chachma and Bina. He knew he's saying correct. And Chassidus always quote, Shasek Rav never means that Rav was refuted. He just didn't know what to answer. The Gemara's problem is that there could have been an answer. Amar Shmuel, my Tama Shasek Rav. I know the answer. V'nei Molei, he can quote another pasuk, guys, in the Parshan Kiseitze. So we quoted Nara Morasa. Prior to it, we had the case that we just quoted Umesu Gam Shneim. That's Tama, that a man found a married woman and he laid with her, cohabited with her. There, the pasuk is speaking about a man who's ma'anas, who rapes a Nara Morasa, the parsha of raping. And it says over there in the parsha of ma'anes, Umeis ho'ish asher shochav ima levadoi. And if you remember the psukim over there, you know what it says in the pasuk right afterwards? It says Vilanara lois asadavar. That's the source that if you're oinus, you're not guilty. Since the Torah writes Ulanara lois asadavar, the next words. So why did the Torah have to write Umeis ho'ish asher shochav ima levadoi? You get it? If you're writing that she won't be punished, okay, which means he will. Why did the whole thing is extra? Is Araya, what do we learn from over here? We learn from over here that there are times that she won't be punished and he will be. Now I know Rashi says that case, she's an adult, she's a bas mitzvah, but she's an oinus. Doesn't matter. An oinus, you don't attribute their act to them like by a minor. So the fact that we find another scenario where even one is completely exempt, the other one is chayiv, that's why Rav is correct when he says over here that if you have a ketana me'oirasa, Taka Rav Meir excludes the man from skila because she's not a nara, but he's going to be chayiv chenek. Okay. Really, the Gemara says that this question, whether if two people commit an act of adultery and one of them is a minor, whether the other one will be punished in court is a machlokes tanoim, kitanoim. And let's go over here. When it says Umesu Gam Shneim, right, the pasuk regarding the act of adultery, clear. Says Rabbi Yoshia, second time today, Ad Sheyu Shneim Shavim. Shneim Shavim means not that they're same, it means that they're both of age. Just don't know what it means. So good to remember that. You begin to think, how can they be Shavim? No, they're both Bar Onshin. Rabbi Yonasan Oimer, since it says Umeis Hoish Asher Shachav Ima Levadoi, like we just learned, mamish the same psukim, that one that Shmuel quoted. But in the Torah says Vilanaro Lisasa Davar. Torah wants to emphasize that we don't need for both of them to be shavin for there to be a punishment, even in a scenario where one is completely not shaykh to the sin because it was against their will, because they're minors. The other one is going to be chayiv. Now, ve'idach hahi umesu gam shnei my dorish bei. So amarava lemuute, a whole different din. That maisei chidudim means that if there was some sort of closeness in which the man was stimulated, but without the proper act of cohabitation, that such a case, there will not be a death penalty given to either of them. Even though it's asur, but the act of bia is an actual act of penetration. And ve'idach, you don't even need to have a pasuk to exclude ma'aseh kedudim, because to begin with, ma'aseh kedudim, lav klumi. Now let's go to the other side.
That's the drasha from Umesu Gam Shneim?
Yes, in other words, they both have to be in the details that when you don't have such an act, the man has pleasure. They don't equally share pleasure. That's the way to be more detailed. If they're not both in it, he stimulated against himself her, but the hana that he had was hana halachically, and she had wasn't that hana, so there wasn't the shneim. Okay, right now ve'ida chai levadei my dorish bei. That bo oleh asar b'nei yodam. We just quoted this really when we learned Rashi, when we quoted the shneim, right? The first the second mechanik. That's the question, and whether a bia shaloi kedarka, what status does it do to the woman? That if this married woman bo oleh asar b'nei yodam ba'adayin hitzula. Not like Rashi we quoted. The Chachamim hold Kulam Beskila. No, it's if she meets all the 4 qualifications. Since the first one did a Maisa Shaloi Kedarka, she's still a Psula. Rabbi Yoimer, no. Harishan Beskila, V'Kulam Bechenek, and that is what we learn from Levadoi. Very good. Only Levadoi means only Levadoi Beskila. Wow. Okay. Gewalt. Tana Rabbana. Now, Me'inyan Le'inyan, just like we find, and that's the sugya that we're learning right now, that a Nara Me'orasa, with all the 4 qualifications, is taken out of the normal din of Chenek, and she has a din of Skila. There is another pasuk in Parshas Emor by Kohanim. There we'll see Machlokes Tanoim, whether we're speaking about a engaged woman, Me'orasa, or a Nesuya. The Torah says, Robas ish koyin ki seichel. The pshat seichel means chulin, that she profaned herself. Liznois esavia hi mechalelas, and here again, the adulteress is not put to death with chenek, but here you have the punishment of skill. So let's go. Tana Rabbanan again. Emoy ubas ish koyin ki seichel liznois. Says Rebbe, this pasuk al pi drasha. I know seichel again means from chulin, but we're going to darshan it. It means from the word tchila, that the punishment of sreifa is if there's some initiation here. What does he mean? Not clear. To make things even more enigmatic, like nish to verstehen, look at the words of Rebbe. And v'chein hu oimer. Now Rebbe is quoting the pasuk from Parshas Ki Seitzei regarding a ma'anes umeis ha'ish asher shachad imay levadoi. We call this a medrash pliya. No, it's not only don't we understand what the Rebbe means with tchila, we don't understand what's the v'chein hu oimer. Mike Amar. So let's go 2 completely different ways of understanding Rebbe. So, Rabbi Yeshua, I'll tell you what Rebbe means. Rebbe is following the Shita that we previously had heard from Rebbe Yishmael. That holds that what? That only a Arusa Yotza L'Sreifa, just like you have this Nara Morasa, even though the Torah in Emor doesn't speak about whether she's Mi'urasa or whether she's an Asuya. The Parsha in Emor, Bas Ishkoin B'Sreifa, is only if she is a Arusa, v'loy Nesuya. Why is that Negeya? Because once a woman is a Nesuya, she becomes a Mu'ula. And that's what he meant with the words Tchila. V'hachi ka'amar im b'tchila biya biznus b'sreifa. If this was her first, if this was her initiation, and now we're making the link, and now I know, Chavre, we're going to learn this again in Ksubis and in Yavamas. Of course, there's a concept that a woman who's Nechnesses l'chuppah can still be Begashmias, a psula, but here he's understanding it that why is she a psula? Because she's a because she's a only a not a she's a me'oirasa. And more than that, even if she's still engaged, if God forbid there was another act of bia of znus, the other one will get chanek like any other act of adultery. The din, and now it fits. And my v'chein gavaldik. No, it's a parsha of Nara Morasa. It's exactly the same. Ki Hasam. Where did Rebbe get that from? In Emor, you don't have that by the Bas Ishkoin. He's making a logical connection that since we find Ma Hasam in the parsha of Nara Morasa, all of the dinim there that you have by Nara Morasa, the Torah says beferish psula. Oh, it's there. It's only Meorasa. Ma Hasam betchilas biyak mikomish toikra. So hachinami. That would be great. But that would only be great if you follow Rabbi Yishmael. You're very happy that Rabbi follows Rabbi Yishmael, but not everyone agrees with that. In other words, if you're going to learn that the Parsha of Emor is speaking about an Asuya, we would definitely rather for Rabbi to follow the halacha if you don't follow Rabbi Yishmael. So Amalei Rabbi. But Abaye, when he heard that interpretation on this Medrash Paliya, on this Braisa that's mamish enigmatic, so Rabbi says, the master didn't learn it this way. Now, by the way, who is the master? Which means who's the teacher of Rabbi Bar Abaye? Rabbi Yosef. He's quoting Rabbi Yosef. How did his master learn it? No, Rabbi doesn't follow Rabbi Yishmael. Rabbi follows like Rabbi Meir. Dafka not like Rabbi Yishmael. The Torah and Kisei say if there's a din specifically to a me'oirasa, the Torah says it. In Parshas Emor, the Torah doesn't mention that. It's speaking about a bona fide married woman. Svira lei or svira lahem, the Amar, Nises, le'echad min apsulin misasa b'chenek. That what? That if she married someone who she's not allowed to marry because she's a kohenes, like if she married a cholol, she married a mamzer, so her marriage was already machalol her, then someone commits adultery with her, she's going to get chenek. In other words, what is the Rebbe saying? Basish Kohen is speaking about a woman that's already nesuya. But even if a woman is nesuya, kiseichel liznais. Kiseichel means not only the pshat, that she profaned herself, but this act was the first thing that profaned her. Prior to this act of adultery, she was a bona fide kosher bas ish kohen. If she got married to someone who she cannot marry, that marriage already profaned her. That is what excludes her. Go on. By the way, this only fits dafka because we're learning that the parsha of Emor is for a woman that's already married, because that is when she becomes profane halachically, not by the kedushin, but by the nesuyin. Since she had a relation with a cholol, well, for example, such a woman can never marry a kohen again. She was machalol herself. And v'hachi ka'amar im tchilas achalasa biznus. What made her become desecrated was the adultery, only then is it b'sreifa. That's what Rabbi means. Masha enkein what? Masha enkein, if she married someone who she's not allowed to marry, she's already a mecholelas. If she's already a mecholelas, she's taka halachically married. That's the whole sugi we have in Yavamas, the machlekes tanoim, right? We don't follow Rabbi Akiva. Rabbi Akiva holds that if a woman gets married to any man who may not cohabit with her, only with a lav, not even if there is a kodesh, not even if there's a misas based in, Rabbi Akiva holds the marriage is not chal, right? We don't follow that way. We follow that if a person is violating a lav, like for example, if a kohen marries a divorced woman, it's lav, but there's no kodesh, there's no capital punishment. The kedushin is chal, the nesuin is chal. They need to get a get. Or I'll tell you even more, even with Rabbi Akiva, if they had a relation, they were not halachically married, but if she had a relation with her husband, she's already a mecholelas. Now, if she commits adultery, she's like any other woman. Now the problem, now it's much harder, because now, according to the first explanation, right from this, he quoted the din, not a morasa. It's exactly the same. Faket, he wanted to show that there it's only meorasa. Here he's quoting from a parsha that's not speaking about a woman who got engaged to someone who she's not got engaged to. So what's the link? So umay v'chein daf samach zayin. You're right. It's not such a great comparison. It's a little bit of a link. The Gemara uses the words, it's a siman. Now, what's the little link? Look inside the top Rashi. Usimana ba'alma is ubetchilas shum davar hakasav medaber, which means that just like in Parshas Not Amorasa, what makes her be excluded from the din of chenek? The fact that there's some newness there. What's the newness over there? The fact that she's a psula. Here, the Bas Ish Kohen, according to Rav Meir, we don't need for her to be a psula. We need for her to be a ksheira. So newness, but not the same type of newness. That's the pshat. The tchilas chilol miyahava. Okay, we're going to stop over here. And God willing, tomorrow to be continued. Well, we finished early, but that's good. We have exactly one more daf. We'll do it. So we're going to start. We'll start LA time. God willing, we'll be by the oil. I'll be by the oil, and it will be 6 a.m. LA time. And this is really, tomorrow will be the real, at least final daf, to get all the dafim up on Chabad.org. And God willing, Tuesday morning, same time, we're gonna make a new chat called the Rambam, and Chabad.org is giving me up a new machine, because it's gonna be a live class. So I'll have another machine.
So starting next Tuesday?
Starting Yud Aleph Nisan. Tomorrow we're learning Sanhedrin and Samach Zayin. And Tuesday morning, we're going to
Tomorrow's
start.
Thursday.
Tomorrow, Thursday, Samach, we're learning I'm learning by the oil.
And Friday?
Friday, I'm going to go listen to my Yavamas, I think Daf Lamed, right? Today's Chavtes, Lamed Aleph.
Okay. So we're starting Tuesday.
Starting Tuesday, learning Hilchas Malva V'Loiva, Prakim Chafei, Chavav, Chavzayin. And the goal, just on the goal, is to get it within an hour. No, was learning it from the daily. It's like you have 100 people are learning. It's good. The goal is to make it even more exciting than the Gemara, which is really not that difficult. The goal is in an hour. We'll get that. We need to do it in an hour.
We're not doing a few days ahead
No, not doing a few days ahead. We're doing it on the day.
because it's 5 hours.
And you're going to do the intro and everything.
So Shabbos, we're going to learn here. I just want to, before we began filming, I love that. So if we're going to go 2 cycles, we're going to learn 2 cycles. That's not less than 2 years. It's like a year and 10 months, even less than that. Because whatever will be Shabbos Yom Tov in Tavshan Pei Beis will be during the week.
You're not gonna just mash the Shabbos.
I don't want to. No. I want to learn every day. I want to say that what I missed from. I mean, we're filming for 7.5 years. We used to learn here every day. Remember Yom Kippur? Yom Kippur we learned in the break.
No, but
it was great.
I'm saying after you finish this.
So Sunday morning is just going to be a single?
You're not gonna be just mashing.
No, I don't like that. This is like, see, we lost everyone for that. We're going to learn 2 cycles of Rambam, and then we'll take it back to the vote. I just want to throw in another option, also Talmud Yerushalmi, just as an option.
Rabbi, so Sunday morning is just going to be 1 class, not a double.
Sunday morning, there won't be any class.
Sunday, no class.
Sunday and Monday, there won't be a
I'm saying Bechlal, not this week.
Sure, Sunday morning will be 1 class. Sunday morning will be a class from 7 to 8.
So Shabbos, we have to do our own.
Shabbos, or you can come in Chabad Sola.
Okay, so
Always
that's,
invited to meet Samach, always.
thank you. No, but I'm saying Gemara, you
Out
did
your
a
kids.
double.
Huh?
What are you doing on Shabbos?
Gemara, you did a double.
Gemara did a double because the only way to do it otherwise would be to learn it for 14 years, you understand? Which we might end up doing. I'm not saying we're not doing it, but that was and one thing, the Gemara, the only downside is that we were never learning the daily daf. And there's an Achdus Yisrael thing. We were close, but we could to upload it. Here, the technology also got a lot better. Like this Zoom, they hate. They find it very inferior. The few times that the class didn't work out and I sent them the Zoom, they didn't even put it up. The live class that we're going to be doing now for the Rambam, which Chabad.org will advertise, we're going to have a lot of people joining us. Zoom is only for us to interaction, but there's going to be a live, they're making a page for that. It's going to be much better quality.
So what are they going to do for the days that you're not live on?
They don't mind. They know that's the beauty. They know that there won't be a live class that day. Shabbos and Yom Tov. Huh?
So you're not gonna have Zoom.
I'm gonna have Zoom. I'm gonna have Zoom for us because Zoom you can interact. I want the interaction.
The live class, you won't be able to.
The live class, absolutely not, because they're gonna start advertising it. You're gonna have all these people everywhere. I don't know what they're gonna ask you. We can't learn.
Oh, so it's just live without interacting.
Yeah, like now you have live YouTube. We have
Oh.
How are you going to be able to have an interactive class with trying 3 Rambams?
it's the same way we had it in the Gemara. That when someone asks a question, well, I think we did it. We did it, so we're gonna do it. And if someone asks a question, Ishlam Zach, I'll make believe I didn't hear.
So you'll have Zoom and Chabad.org machine
That's right, and live.
and live. La
Yes.
Yehudim. Okay, looking forward.
Gamani.